Hello and welcome back to the Single Malt Review. This week's episode brought to you by a very fleeting vision of Campbell, with a bit of a lingering vision of his bum. There we go. He's off. Never mind. He doesn't really show up on the camera very well anyway. He's too black a cat. But what we're really here for, as usual, is the whiskey. And what we have today is something really pretty quirky. Well, the whiskey is pretty conventional actually. Benrinnes, not a particularly out there whiskey, but this brand I was very surprised to see. We've only just got this in New Zealand, and it is that, and that is actually part of it begins, That Boutique-y Whisky Company is the whole name of this brand, and they bottle independent casks, well, independent bottles, and their shtick seems to be putting something deeply weird on the label that sort of references whiskey culture in some way.
Iconic moments in whiskey history or in whiskey review and connoisseurship.
Yeah, and so this one, I'll show you that one there. Probably doesn't come up under the studio lights, but this one we have a scene of two men wearing hats, one of whom's name is Pete, so I don't know if that's enough information to go on to actually ID these guys. I cannot say they ring a bell for me, but I certainly haven't plumbed the depths of whiskey videos around the thing, so maybe this is more iconic to someone than me. So anyway, enough about that. We'll get into the whiskey and see what's really going on. But just think, Dave, one day we might be on the bottle of this.
Yes.
I hope it's something good. I don't know what any of our iconic scenes would be. Probably something involving cats. Actually, that's definitely what it's going to be, actually.
Independently bottled, cask strength, 18-year-old Benrinnes. Goodness.
And they're funny wee bottles. They're 500ml.
Yeah.
So on one hand, you get a wee bit less, but on the other, they're a wee bit cheaper. Which isn't so bad if you want to try a bit more broadly the sort of things they're bottling. But neither are they particularly cheap at all, because they tend to go, I said this one's a pretty conventional whiskey, they normally go for stuff that's a bit rarer, a bit harder to find, and subsequently a bit more expensive. So this is probably one of the more kind of normal things.
I've had some truly outstanding Benrinnesses in my time, including independently bottled examples.
Well, I'm not off the top of my head sure if Benrinnes has a label of single malt. It is, and it's got good company here, one of these sort of blendy ones, which most of their output just goes straight into blends and never sees the light of day. I'm not sure exactly which blends Benrinnes goes into, or even who owns it. I'd need to look that up. Very likely Diageo, but I don't absolutely know for sure.
I've had a mental blank. Where are Benrinnes based?
Benrinnes. Are they Speyside? Not going to tell me. We'll just have to look that one up later. They are a pretty conventional whiskey, though, as you can kind of see here. This will be undoubtedly bourbon matured. It looks like probably second fill to me. I'm not sure if they give us number of bottles here. Bottle number 107 of 154, so that's not a big run at all. So probably looking at a bourbon barrel there, getting so few out of it. You'd be a bit disappointed getting that many bottles out of a hogshead. That would be a real leaker there. So I think, bourbon barrel is probably the go here. Bourbon barrel or very faulty hoggy.
It's a relatively pale gold, sort of a strawy colour, but a little bit of a cloudiness there. It's not pure crystal clear.
Yeah, it's of course cask strength, uncoloured, unchilled, filtered, which we shouldn't have to say. They are an independent bottler after all. They'd be really breaking the mould if they were going and molesting their whiskey as they put it into the bottle. That's really not the thing to do if you're into your independent bottles. So I think we're seeing a wee bit of cloud just because we've recently rinsed our glasses out and it's a fairly cool day. It's probably all the encouragement it needed to cloud up. So aroma-wise...
I like it already. It's a bit of a subdued nose, but there's a lot of baked goods going on there. I'm thinking blueberry muffins, hot buttered Jamaican ginger loaf.
It is. There's a lot of butter. There's a lot of. It's a very creamy kind of a nose. It is very light bodied and very typical of fairly mellow American wood. There's was I to just completely take it off the top of my head, I'd say this is a Speyside whiskey because of just what's in here. There's shortbread, certainly. There's heaps and heaps of natural almonds, not even roasted almonds. Oh, it's marzipan.
Yeah. In fact, this is bringing me back to one of my early whiskey memories. One of my first forays into independently bottled whiskey was, I believe it was a McGibbon's Inheritance. Does that ring a bell?
Ooh, McGibbon's. Yeah, I think there was a weekend over here. We got those.
13-year-old Benrinnes, and it was an astonishingly powerful Christmas cake in a bottle, just packed full of cakey, jammy, fruity goodness. Christmas pudding just straight into your glass with a good dash of pepper, a little bit of hot spice on top. I remember it well after probably at least 10 years. It is a very, very nice whiskey, and this is reminding me of that, only quite a lot older and a bit more mellow.
Yeah, very, very gentle for 18 years old. You could, I wouldn't have even said it was 18 based on the laid back kind of gentle quality of the nose. It's certainly a very, very sort of subdued wood there.
And I think it's at its full cask strength, and it's still about easy to take in.
So speaking of full cask strength, which is 52.5, so not atomic in strength, but
there it goes. That's that's that rich fruitcake goodness happening there. A good spicy kick straight up, as you'd expect from something this hot, this high strength. Yeah, straight into dried fruit, some syrupy soaked sponge cake, and
certainly sponge cake. It leans more to a sponge cake rather than fruit cake to me. It's definitely it's on your light cake spectrum of cake flavors, but there's a lot of fruit which wasn't quite as evident on the nose as it is on the palate. There's sort of light, again, Speyside kind of fruits, red apples and pears, and a little bit of even a wee bit of nectarine in there. Very, very subtle citrus quality, but the sort of buttery pastry and the shortbread just sort of goes on, and the sort of quite dense, oily quality of the whiskey is there quite significantly too.
A nice drizzle of honey and syrup on top of that too. A good, generous sweetness which ties it all together.
There's honey there, but it's sort of the lightest clover honey you could imagine. It's really, really
very
light.
creamy. Yeah.
It doesn't have huge. There's a little bit of windbush flower on there, gorse flower as we call it down here. But the floral notes are very sort of mellow, and they are very sort of lilting and laid back. I'll put a wee bit of water in and see what that draws out. I think it'll make it a damn sight fruitier than it is at the moment, and we might lose some of that oiliness and that buttery quality.
This is eminently drinkable straight up. It's got a certain spicy heat to it, as you'd get for something this strong, but it handles it well, and it still communicates so many flavours despite that.
So that's clouded up
water.
immediately there.
It's gone even more opaque than it was previously. Oh, there comes a whole load of treacle and a bit of vanilla. Now it's sort of I'm thinking of hot syrupy pancakes a little.
Yeah, there is
still all
vanilla.
that fruit compote, some jam, and still some more Christmas pudding just lurking in the background. This is kind of a perfect winter dram. It's middle of winter here in New Zealand. We're trying out. So it's the Christmassy element is a bit unseasonal for us. Christmas being in the summer for us, but if you're used to Christmas being in the cold depths of winter, then that's exactly what you're going for here. It's reminding me so much of the younger Benrinnes I had there one time from the other independent bottler. This is doing really well. It's
an interesting whiskey in that it is very, very light-bodied in terms of the oak character and in terms of how the spirit is made. It's very light spirit, but it's taken on a density to it which is kind of difficult to describe. There's a weight there, and it's almost like you got a lot of these very light-bodied flavours and just laid them on really thick. There's a huge sort of density is really density and sort of really, really solid mouth feel, I suppose, is the only way I could begin to describe it. It's something you really only see with cask strength unchill filtered whiskies, because that's that sort of rich, oily fullness, all that sort of oil, all that protein, all that stuff that's otherwise stripped out by chill filtration. That can give you this really textural whiskey experience, and that's definitely in here, even though with a bit of water it freshens it up quite a lot.
It's such a luxurious, layered and indulgent set of flavours. There are no bitter elements, no harsh edges to work through. It's just one after another, a succession of rich, flavoursome, bountiful, Yeah.
Yeah. So not a bad one at all.
Cakes,
from That
pies,
Boutique-y Whisky
and
Company.
sweet fruits.
I do hope to try some other ones by that brand when the opportunity presents itself. But as for where this one stacks up, it is really, really nice.
Yeah.
I like my whiskey with a little bit more maybe depth to the flavour, like slightly darker, richer, more punchy. This one is very, very lilting and gentle, and but nonetheless, it's a supremely good example of that style, and it was a hell of a cask to pick from, I think. So that's a good 88 for me. What do you think?
I'm going to go a bit higher. I love the breadth of flavour that is going on here, the sheer number of different things which are packed together, but also thematically consistent. Everything from the pancakes to muffins to the Christmas pud and the dried fruits. It's just a real proper harmony of flavours. And I'll give it a 91.
There you go.
It's outstanding.
It's strong stuff, boy. That's getting fruitier by the minute.
Yeah.
Having that water put in, we'll end this before I have to go and redact some of my tasting notes from earlier. It's we've seen it time and again. Cask strength whiskies. Once you put the water in, the ride begins.
You're just off on a journey.
And the ride can, well, as some would say, the ride never ends. But it will certainly go to very different places over a series of minutes, maybe over an hour. Really goes to show what sitting down with your whiskey and taking your time you can benefit from it. It's almost like trying a whole range in one sitting sometimes. So that would be my advice if you end up with a bottle of this.
Take it slow and appreciate it. Yeah.
Sludger, we'll be right back with, what am I looking at? A peculiarity, a curiosity. See you then.